Hi, Justin here from Combative Edge Martial Arts, and we are doing another episode of Lead the Minutes. As we all know, you cannot be a fabulous leader until you lead yourself fabulously. We know this, but obviously it's easier said than done. On a quick side note, just know that you can catch the whole episode on leadtheminutes.com. All right, so without further ado, we're going to talk about a concept that I read. It's actually out of one of John Gordon's books. Weed and feed. Weed and feed. Do you weed and feed your mind? The whole concept of weed and feed is all about, protecting your mind. Your mind is like a garden. And you got your vines and you have, you got your weeds growing, and you got to always maintain that garden, right? Just like any other garden that you see out in the world, you have the gardeners and they're maintaining that garden. So in a way, you got to put a gardener inside your mind that's constantly maintaining that mind, constantly weeding that mind. So and in a way, you got to empower that gardener to constantly keep working and digging and ripping out those weeds. And the question you have to ask yourself is, well, how do we weed and then feed our mind? First thing we gotta do is we gotta guard our self-talk. Okay, first thing is guard our self-talk. Putting yourself down, telling yourself you're no good. We've all done this. You might have done this today. You might have just been like, oh my goodness, I did that 5 minutes ago. Okay, you gotta guard your self-talk. When you guard your self-talk and you start to talk positive about yourself, you are letting the gardener run around your garden in your mind, start watering and planting and starting to cultivate your garden. Okay? So guard your self-talk. Very, very, very important. Another thing we can do is read positive books. Read positive books, right? Constantly feed that mind. Always feeding that mind. And you know what? There are I've discussed this before. There are people who grow up in a home where it's loving and nurturing and caring, and having a positive attitude comes easy to them. Every day is just a great day. And then there are people like me who grew up in a not such a great home, and we have to work on it daily. And that's something that we always have to understand, is that you have to work your attitude all the time. You gotta work it all the time, and you gotta, especially if you are more like myself, where you see the, everything on a darker side of life because you grew up rough, right? You gotta start to read positive things, positive literature, positive books, and start to allow the gardener in your mind to do his work. Because if you don't give that gardener the tools, you don't give him that positive that he needs, he's not going to be able to weed, and he's not going to be able to feed. Okay? So you got to weed out the mind, and you got to feed it. Feed it positivity, positive stuff. Okay? And it's important to understand this, because if we don't do this, then in a way we will be out of sync. You know what I mean? And we'll maybe have a good day because it's sunny out, and then and when it's raining out, it's a terrible day. Okay, so in a way, we start to, when you don't weed and feed your mind correctly, you let your external environment take play, right? So you gotta safeguard everything that happens inside you up here, okay? So you have to be in control of the content that comes into your mind, right? You can control that. Watching, stuff on TV that's not great, or maybe social media, or watching too much of the news, the negative news, right? These are things that are going to let the weeds grow, right? And then you got to get a nice sharp blade to that gardener, and you got to tell him, go to work. And by allowing him to go to work, to make him go to work, you got to sharpen that tool. How do you sharpen that tool? By feeding the positive stuff into your mind. Allowing your mind to absorb it, think on it, get creative with it. And most importantly, you got to learn how to apply it to your life. You got to apply it to your life. Because it's one thing to learn something, but then you don't do it. Nothing will change. And I remember I had a real issue with that, because for the longest time I believed if I just did it and I went through the motion, that was it. You know, it's like a one and done kind of a guy, and it's like no. Like, Justin, you can't do that. You got to work at it. And I started to understand what it means to apply what you know to your life and actually go through the process of developing yourself. Go through the process of changing. And it hurts. It's painful, it hurts, and it's not fun. We know this. That's why a lot of people don't like change, right? That's why a lot of people don't like change, because it hurts. But it's necessary. And when you're going through change, good change, you are weeding and feeding your mind. You are cutting down the weeds. You are taking care of your garden. But if you go through change that isn't good and you're letting the weeds take over, starting to cloud your good thoughts in your mind, and negativity starts to kick in, right? You got a problem. And one thing to always understand is that the gardener will never be retired. He will never retire. And he shouldn't retire. Okay? Because this is a lifelong journey. And you're going to be battling your negative thoughts all the time. But when we weed and we feed, right? It's like when you're feeding the positive and starving the negative, right? When you feed the positive, starve the negative never dies. It just gets small and weak. The weeds never stop growing. They're just maintained. But if the gardener doesn't keep working, if the gardener does not keep, if you don't keep feeding the gardener and sharpening his tools by feeding your mind positive stuff, constantly learning and growing to become a better person, to share that knowledge with everybody else, and to live that knowledge that you learned, your weeds will grow. Your weeds will grow. Okay? So this is very, very important to understand. So let's let's review. You got to guard your self-talk. Right? Very important. Say positive things about yourself. Positive things about yourself. I talk to myself all the time. You should talk to yourself. Right? Might feel a little weird in the beginning, but hey, man, tell that you say, hey, be like, Justin, you're a great guy. You're awesome. You're amazing. You're going to do awesome today. You're going to wake up with a smile on your face, and you're going to go. Right? Remember, walk to a positive attitude. Wake up with a smile on your face. Right? Accept the responsibility. Take responsibility for everything that happens. Why? Because that empowers you to get off the complain train. It empowers you to make a change in your life. Right? Look for the positive. And always know yourself. You got to know yourself to grow yourself. Right? You got to keep working. You got to keep feeding your mind. Okay, so you got to walk to a positive attitude. Okay, so this is, we talked about that. So one thing that we have to understand is we got to guard our self-talk. And when you guard your self-talk, you're walking to a positive attitude. Okay, very simple. So we always got to walk. Don't get on that complaint train, whatever you do. Now, we gotta what? We gotta watch what we consume, right? We can control the content that comes into our minds. So watch what you consume, watch what you watch. Watch things that are positive, read things that are positive. Okay? Another thing that you can do to weed and feed your mind is be aware of the people you hang out with. Be very aware. There are a lot of people on that complaint train, guys, and they are complaining all the time. For example, today I told my mom was complaining. I'm like, Ma. She looked at me, she goes, what? I'm like, get off the complaint train. And she looked at me and she smiled because she knows what I'm talking about. And she's like, all right, I'm sorry, I'm off the complaint train. And she jumped off. We got to remind each other from time to time. I'm not perfect. There's times when I get on the complaint train and my mom looks at me and she's like, ho, what are you doing? Get off the complaint train, dude. Get off. I don't want to hear it. And I'm like, oh my goodness, sorry, thank you. Right? Use that as, to check each other. Okay? But you got to have people who you're walking with. Okay? Because if you got people who you're trying to walk with, but they're on the complaint train, they're going to make your weeds grow. So you got to be aware of the people that you hang out with. Okay? You got to be aware of all these people you hang out with. And you got to think, do I want these people in my life? Do I need these people in my life? Are they helping me become a better person? Because I'll tell you what, you find some genuine friends, some real friends that want to help you become a better you. Keep them close to you. But don't just be a taker. Make sure you're a giver. Make sure you turn around and you are helping them become a better person as well. Right? Goes both ways. So these are things that we got to really think about. I mean, these are things that we gotta really talk about, okay? Because who you accept into your life, into your inner circle, is either going to grow your weeds or going to give you strength. Cut those weeds and feed your mind. Right? I hope I can be someone that helps you feed your mind. And I hope that can be a way to help you sharpen your tools to cut those weeds down, because they will always grow. Just like, the negativity, you got to starve it. It will never die, but you can make it small and weak. The weeds will grow. They will never stop growing, but you can cut it down and keep it controlled by placing positive thoughts, right? Guarding your self-talk. Talk positive about yourself. Read positive things. And that will allow positive, plants to grow in your garden. All right. So again, we always want to weed and feed. All right. We want to walk to that positive attitude, right? Wake up with a smile. Okay. Accept responsibility. Allows you to, when you accept all responsibility, you take all responsibility, take it. It gives you the power to change your life. Jump off that complaint train. Be like, that's it, I'm done, I'm out, I'm see you later, I'm going to take responsibility, and you jump off, you start walking. Okay? Then what you got to do? You got to look for the positive. You got to look for the positive. Look for the information. Look for the people you want to hang out with. And then know yourself. You got to know yourself to grow yourself. You got to know where you want to go and who you want to be. When you know where you want to go, when you know who you want to be, you'll find the people to hang with. Birds of a feather flock together. That is true. Okay? But what birds are you hanging out with? Are you hanging out with birds that feed your mind? Or are you hanging out with birds that grow your weeds? Something to think about. Right? Something to think about. So, we want to know ourselves, and when you know yourself, this prevents you from getting back onto that complaint train. This gives you the ability to what? To whack down those weeds and be like, enough. I am feeding my mind. So you got to weed and feed constantly, every day. Weed and feed. Always be on the bright side of life. Take it from me, I was not there for the longest time. I was on the dark side of life for a very long time. And I'll tell you what, once when you get to the bright side of life, you're going to realize, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back to that dark and gloomy and everybody's out to get you and all the boo-hoos. I don't want to do that. Okay? I want to stay on the bright side of life. And I can say that because I was on the dark side of life. I was there and it wasn't fun for me. But once when I started to learn how to weed and feed, to feed the positive and starve the negative, and I started getting that down, and I keep reading, because trust me, I read positive books all the time. Watch positive things all the time to keep beating in my mind, and I stay away from negative stuff, even negative people. And I'll tell you this. I cut out a lot of friends out of my life. Lots of friends who were just sheer negative. On the complaint train, just, we didn't mesh anymore. Why? Because they were going one way and I went a different way. And we weren't on the same path. And that's okay. It's okay. Just go your way. You don't need to say anything mean about them. You don't need to put them down, but just know in the back of your head, feel like you're not there for me and you're not what I need right now. And you go on your way. Because I'm going to tell you this right now, there will be times when you have to walk alone to that positive attitude. You got to find ways to garden your mind, to weed and feed your mind so that you can cut the negative out. Because if you don't cut those weeds down, they're going to wreck you up here. All right? That's it for now, guys. Justin here from Combative Edge Martial Arts. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Lead the Minutes. And always remember, you cannot be a fantastic leader until you learn how to lead yourself in a fantastic way. Okay? Or I should say, you cannot be a fabulous leader until you learn to lead yourself fabulously. I say it differently all the time. All right. Have yourselves a great day. Bye-bye.